Today I have the special privilege of introducing a special guest and extending a heartfelt welcome to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education, Arne Duncan. Arne Duncan is in his second term as the U.S. Secretary of Education and knows that access to a quality education beginning in the earliest years makes a profound and positive impact on a child for life. He has called upon us, principals, to become warriors in turning around our nation's lowest performing schools, and with the urging of NAESP and NAESP, is introducing a Principal Ambassador program this year to help inform the department from a real practitioner's perspective. At NAESP, we greatly appreciate that Secretary Duncan welcomes and values the voice, experience, and wisdom of principals, that he keeps the lines of communication open with them directly and through our association, and that he acknowledges our roles as instructional leaders. We are grateful to the Secretary for holding principals in the highest regard, as demonstrated by his presence here today. Following Secretary Duncan's remarks, NAESP's Executive Director, Gail Connolly, will join Secretary Duncan on stage for a short question and answer session. With great respect, it is now my honor and privilege to welcome the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, to share his thoughts on the state of our nation's education and the critical role of elementary and middle level principals. Secretary Duncan.
I just want to say a couple quick things and really get into the discussion with you. First, as a parent of a rising 6th grader and 4th grader, I want to say thank you. And my children go to a wonderful neighborhood public school with an amazing principal. And I'm able to do what I do and travel the country and try and help kids across the country because I'm so confident about the quality of education that my 2 kids are receiving. And if you guys are half the principal that Ms. Begley is back in Arlington, our country's in very good shape. So thank you as a parent. Please give yourselves a round of applause. And this is obviously a really difficult time to be a principal. More is being asked of you than ever before, less resources, more challenges, more kids coming with different issues, less funding than you would like. Know you're coming off the end of a long year and just appreciate you taking the time to come together, to think, to learn, to grow, to partner, to collaborate. I think that's how we all continue to improve, and whatever we can do to be helpful, we want to do that. What I would do quickly is just sort of talk through where we're trying to go over the next three years, 6 months, short amount of time, and trying to be as impactful as we can. Always talk about a cradle to career agenda. So first I want to talk about a huge emphasis on dramatically expanding access to early childhood education. And our fundamental goal is to make sure that our babies aren't entering kindergarten coming to you a year to a year and a half behind, as so many of our young children are. And so the President's proposed a very ambitious agenda, $75 billion, to make sure children have access to high quality pre-K. When I think about gifts that we can give to the country, not for the next 3 years, but for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, arguably the most important thing we can do is to get our babies off to a good start. As all of you know, you spend so much time and energy trying to play catch up. And I just keep saying in education, we have to get out of the catch up business. And the only way we get out of the catch up business is if we level the playing field at the start. This is a significant investment. There's nothing cheap about $75 billion, but there's been lots of longitudinal studies that talk about a 7-to-1 return on investment. That for every dollar we as a country invest in high quality early learning, we get back $7. Less teenage pregnancy, less crime, less dropouts, more people graduating from high school, going to college, getting jobs, being productive citizens, paying taxpayers. This should be a bipartisan issue. It shouldn't matter regardless of politics or ideology. And we're working really hard in Washington right now to try and get folks to come together to make that significant investment. Please stay tuned on that. Secondly, obviously a huge amount of change now with Common Core coming on. And happy to get into a deeper conversation there. But as all of you strive to be instructional leaders, this is both an amazing opportunity, but also a big challenge. I'm absolutely convinced this is the right thing to do for the country. We have to raise the bar. We have to stop dumbing down standards. We have to give our children a chance to compete in an internationally competitive economy. Having higher standards, moving away from fill out the bubble tests, giving our students the critical thinking skills and the analytical skills they need to be successful long term is hugely important. Having said that, change is really hard, and it's difficult for students, it's difficult for you, it's difficult for teachers. Parents probably don't really know what's fully coming at them. We need to stay the course, we need to work together, we need to learn from our mistakes, but I think if we can stay the course these next couple years, 2, 3, 4 years, the other side of this, with much higher standards and better assessments, I think we'll move the country to a fundamental different place, and look forward to partnering with you to figure out how best to get there and to make mid-course corrections when we need to do that. Secondly, obviously, the horrendous tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut this year impacted all of us, and the loss of life, an amazing principal, teachers, a set of 5- and 6-year-olds. I've spent a lot of time with the school there, with the community, with the families, and we have to do everything we can to help you and to help our schools be safe. And that's not asking too much, I think, of any of us. The principal there, the teachers are just absolute heroes. There's so much we ask you to do. You shouldn't have to give your lives to protect your children. That's not in the job description. You guys aren't serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. Again, this is another issue where I think we should absolutely be able to work in a bipartisan way, put politics and ideology to the side. The president's asking Congress for $200 million to put into school safety, whether it's facility issues, whether it's counselors, whether it's social workers. I always try and speak candidly. I'm not a big fan of arming schools. I think social workers, counselors, after-school programs is a much better way to do that. But I also very much respect differences of opinion, and our goal is not to micromanage this from Washington. Our goal is to try and create a pot of resources that folks at the local level can figure out what the best thing to do is for their children and their school and their community, and we want to work hard to get that done. Third, I think, again, trying to be very self-reflective, and it's an amazing opportunity to have a second term. That doesn't always happen. It's an absolute gift. What worked well, what didn't. One thing I think we haven't done enough in the first term was to invest in principal leadership. And principals are CEOs. One of the joys of my job is I get to go to hundreds and hundreds of schools every single year, great schools, medium schools, struggling schools. I've yet to find an amazing school that didn't have an amazing principal. I keep looking for that school, don't think I'm going to find it, but as you all know better than anyone, leadership matters tremendously. Great principals make a huge difference in the culture of the school, and the ability to attract and retain great teachers, the ability to create a culture of high expectations. So in very tough economic times with many budget challenges and sequester, which has been a disaster, and I apologize for the dysfunction in Washington on that, we have to get it fixed. But in very tough economic times, we're actually asking for a 230% increase in funding for principals to about $98 million. And we want to work on principal pipeline. We want to work on mentoring, on career ladders, on collaboration, on building communities of practice, master principals, mentor principals. We think there's a whole set of work we need to do to better support all of you and the hard work you're doing and support the next generation of rising principals as well. So we want to push very hard on that. Nancy talked about the Principal Ambassador Program. That was a fantastic idea that came to us, so we did a series of different things. We've had a wonderful, wonderful Teacher Ambassador Program. And one of the people came to me not too long ago and said, how come we don't have a principal ambassador? I didn't have a good answer. I was like, man, I should have thought of that 3.5 years ago. So we're going to put that in place as we go into next fall. Josh Clares, who's a wonderful principal who's here, is helping us think that through. If any of you guys are interested in serving with us for a year to really make sure the principal's voice is heard as we think through policy and practice, those applications are actually due next week on the 16th. So if you haven't heard about it, please look at our website quickly. We'd love to have folks who are just absolutely extraordinary, who've done an amazing job in their schools, but want to help shape the policy agenda at the national level, come and partner with us. And then the final thing I'll just mention quickly, because I'm spending lots of time on this right now, is trying to keep down the cost of college. And whether this is for your own children or this is for your students, this is an issue that I think is really crushing America right now. So there's a huge amount of debate, as you're probably seeing, around keeping down the rate on student loans, the Stafford loans. Those rates doubled, unfortunately, on July 1st. Those can be reversed. We can fix them retroactively. We need Congress to work together. And while I wish it had been fixed earlier, I'm honestly very, very optimistic this will get fixed. I'm talking every day and late into the night with House and Senate members, Republican and Democrat. Folks are really trying to find common ground and figure this thing out. And I'm hoping in the not too distant future we'll get to the right place. Having said that, I just want to be really clear to you and to everyone else, that debate is just about the cost of debt. It is not about the mountain of debt that young people and their families are facing. And so it's an important step, but it is just one step. The fact that we have $1 trillion in debt out there, the fact that the average young person is graduating about $26,000 in debt, for me it's just way too high. And there's no easy answers here. This is about shared responsibility, but the dream of going to college has to be there for everybody. It can't just be for the wealthy, for the few. And right now, unfortunately, that's starting to be both the perception and the reality. So having your voice, having your collective thoughts on that is really important. We need to challenge states to continue to invest in education at every level, early childhood, K-12, higher ed. We have to challenge universities to keep down their tuition. So it's a lot to put out there, but I just want to let you know that, again, this cradle-to-career agenda, we have to move on all of those at the same time. If we can make a massive investment in early childhood education, one of the best things we can do. If we can continue to support you and move towards higher standards, we think that's going to change education for a long, long time. Then ultimately, again, some form of higher education, four-year universities, two-year community colleges, trade, technical, vocational training has to be the goal and aspiration for every single one of your students, and we got to make sure that they and their families have a chance to do that. But thank you so much. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for the difference you're making in the lives of children every single day. I look forward to your questions. Thanks for having me this morning.
We're really pleased to have you here today, Arne, and we really appreciate the department's commitment to improving our nation's schools and also to recognizing the vital role of principals. The creation of the Principal Ambassador Program that you mentioned, we can't tell you how valuable that is and how we're looking forward. And I think you're going to be deluged with applications. So it should be a big job to decide which one to choose. Well, we polled our audience and said if you could ask the Secretary of Education one question, what would it be? I'm hoping we can drill down a little deeper. So let's get started. You mentioned the $98 million for school leadership. Can you share with our audience a little more detail about the programs and the resources that are going to be available specifically for principals?
Yeah, and again, to be clear, this is our budget request, and we have to get Congress to approve that. I'm trying to figure out ways to print money. We haven't quite figured out how to do that yet, and again, your collective support would be very helpful. But at the end of the day, again, Gail, I just think honestly, there's nothing more important we can do than get a great principal into every school. And when that happens, so many good things happen. When you don't have that strong leader, so many bad things happen. And so I'm thinking about this at a couple different levels. First is how do we build the pipeline of the next generation of talent coming in? We have a baby boomer generation that's moving towards retirement. There's going to be significant turnover in both teachers and principals over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and making sure the next generation is ready to come in is hugely important. Secondly, I think being a principal can be a pretty isolating job, and you have huge responsibility. You're literally the only one like yourself in a building, and chances for principals to share, that's why these kinds of conferences are important, chances for principals to share, to collaborate, to build communities of practice, to have, again, master principals, mentor principals, sort of different rungs on the career ladder. I just think as a country we haven't begun to be enough, show enough sort of creativity and innovation there. And for every principal who's struggling, there's another principal doing an amazing, amazing job who can help that struggling principal and help get them ready and help them through the hard times. So it's the kind of thing we want to work with you and with the association and think through the best use of resources, but both supporting existing principals and helping to support the next generation of talent. Those at the top line are the two things we'd like to do a better job of.
Well, we look forward to working with you, and of course we have a national mentor certification program. Believe wholeheartedly that one of the best ways we can help new principals is by providing those very greatly needed mentoring services. So look forward to working with you in that regard. Switching gears just a little bit, you also mentioned preschool, the amazing commitment that this administration has made to early education. We couldn't be more thrilled as as the K-12 community. And could you tell us a little bit more about what you think this move means for K-12 and what particularly will be available to help principals as they begin to create that continuum seamless learning?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to think about this as like a birth through age 8 or age 9, pre-K to 3 initiative. So it has to be seamless. We have to make sure that this is very, very tight. But let me just be really, really clear. It's stunning when you just look at the data, the basic facts. The average child coming from a disadvantaged community, the average child starts kindergarten at 5 years old this fall, next month, whenever it is, August, September. They start school a year to 14 months behind. And then we wonder why we have achievement gaps, we wonder why we have dropout rates, we wonder why we have all these challenges. And we just simply have to level the playing field. And so this is a significant investment. We're partnering very closely with HHS, Health and Human Services, and Kathleen Sebelius has been an amazing partner. We're out traveling the country together. So to be clear, she would focus on the 0 to 3 space, home visiting and early Head Start and strengthening families. And then we would focus on dramatically expanding access to pre-K. And it could be in schools, obviously, it could be in nonprofits or social service agencies. We have many governors, Republican and Democrat, who are investing now. But as I travel the country, we just see massive waiting lists. This is children and families who are looking for a chance to have access, and it just doesn't exist. And again, today across the country, less than 30%, less than 3 in 10 of our 4-year-olds have access to high quality pre-K. I just think that is fundamentally unfair. It is educationally unsound. I think it's morally unacceptable. And again, these economic benefits long term, this is the best investment we can make. So we're going to do everything we can to get Congress to follow the lead of states. And we just want to partner with states. This wouldn't be any kind of mandate or anything like that. We simply want to invest in states that want to do more. And again, our goal is not to tinker around the edges. This is pretty ambitious. We want to go from about 1.1 million children with access to pre-K to 2.2. We want to double, 100% increase.
And yay. A bit of a follow-up question. How do you see many of our elementary schools are not adequately prepared to really welcome those children? What specifically will happen to help them as they create those bridges?
Yeah, so in this package would be money for facilities and for construction. It's money to pay teachers better, which we don't do that. So there'd be lots of flexibility here. And again, we would partner with states. There are different needs in different states. So again, this could be school-based, it could be nonprofit-based, faith-based, whatever. We sort of want to have a mixed delivery system. When I was in Chicago, we struggled in some of our Hispanic communities where we had significant overcrowding. We lacked capacity. So we actually started something that people thought was a little crazy, but it ended up working beautifully. We had a third shift of pre-K. We had a morning shift and then an afternoon shift. Then we actually put in place an evening shift from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 6 or 7 at night. Again, a little non-traditional, but what we have to do is we have to create opportunities where families don't have them. So we can use money for schools, for facilities, but we have lots of other community assets, and we want to think about this in a comprehensive way.
And we would encourage you to think about the pivotal role that principals can fill in leveraging many resources to help achieve those goals.
Yeah.
Switching gears again just a little and looking sort of at the other end of the spectrum for elementary schools, we have many principals in our audience who are middle level principals. Can you talk a little bit about how the department is focusing on helping to provide supports and services for middle level?
So again, whatever we can do, whatever feedback you have of how we can be a better partner, we want to hear that. But there's a number of things we're trying to do. As you know, we've invested very heavily in turning around underperforming schools through the school improvement grants, $5 billion. A significant portion of that has gone to the middle school level. We've tried every year support Gear Up and other programs that help students make that transition. And I'm very, very interested in trying to think about how we have more 8th graders taking classes like Algebra 1, classes for high school credit. One of the ways we ultimately reduce college costs at the back end, I'd love to have a lot more high school students graduating from high school with AP classes or even with an associate's degree done before they leave high school. We're starting to see some of that. For that to happen at the high school level, clearly you have to start to sow those seeds at 6th and 7th and 8th grade. So helping to turn around chronically underperforming schools, providing more support, and thinking about where we can accelerate student achievement so they're getting some high school credits while in middle school love to have those conversations.
Terrific. We would be very interested in also looking at how vulnerable those children are as they transition from the elementary to the middle level, and count on our full support and help in any way that we can.
It's a great point, and as all of you know, times of transition are just really difficult. You know, elementary to middle, middle to high, high to college, and the more that's seamless, the more we're talking, the more it's not we're just passing the kid on, but figuring out how we make those transitions as smooth as possible. Those are times of huge risk where kids are very vulnerable, and I think we have to get a lot smarter and more sophisticated about how we make those transitions much smoother.
Terrific. Now we're going to get to perhaps a little bit tougher question. You know, our current accountability systems, even most of the waivers, still are relying on standardized test scores as the sole measure for school and student success. Principals will tell you that that's misguided, to say the least, and they'd tell you a lot more if they had the opportunity. Am I right? But we know under your leadership that we're beginning to get serious about looking at multiple measures of success. And as we look at multiple measures, it also leads to multiple assessments. And we know that requires a lot of resources and, importantly, a lot of professional development for principals. Do you see, as you look toward the horizon, how will we come to terms with the fact that there are multiple measures of success, and then what kinds of supports and services will be provided to help gear up before we go off that cliff, so to speak, to really make certain that we are being fair and true to the purpose, the real purpose of education?
So I think there are a lot of concerns that many folks here would share. I worry about an over-reliance on a single test score. I worry about an over-reliance on testing in general and the amount of time that we're testing kids. And again, I see it with my own 2 children. And so there's always, I think, a common sense middle ground. I do think we should assess kids annually. I think we should have a sense of whether kids are improving each year or not. I don't think if kids are taking 15 or 20 days of tests, that's a good use of time. I don't think if everyone is teaching to a test score and teaching to a fill-in-the-bubble test, that's helping our kids be successful. So it's a longer conversation, but ultimately, I just think No Child Left Behind is fundamentally broken. We need to fix it. We need to fix it together. We worked really, really hard with Congress to fix it last year and fix it in a bipartisan way. Unfortunately, Congress is pretty broken right now. That didn't happen. My hope, and again, maybe I'm naive or optimistic, my hope is if we can get the student loan interest rate stuff done together, that can create some momentum and we can keep moving and sort of build a track record that we can actually, Congress can become more functional. So what we did, because I think I just thought we couldn't live on any more in No Child Left Behind, is we created the waiver process. And thankfully we had the authority to do that. And we've partnered with the vast majority of states around the country. And I encourage folks to look at our website and look at the different waivers coming from different states. And while this was clearly my plan B, my plan A was to fix it, there's actually some amazing creativity coming from states. And you're seeing states move way beyond a test score for accountability, looking at increases in graduation rates, looking at reductions in dropout rates, looking at the number of students who are going on to college, looking at the number of students who are going to college not needing remedial classes, which is a really, really big deal and makes college much more expensive if you burn through Pell Grants. Looking at folks not just going to college, but persevering. Are they going through? We put out just last week, actually, in some of our early school improvement data, baseline data, is attendance for kids going up or down? Is truancy going up or down? Or discipline rates going up and down? So we know there's a whole host of indicators, test scores being one, but far from the only one that sort of matters. And I would argue a lot of test scores are often lagging indicators. A lot of these other things are what I call leading indicators, where attendance is going up, where truancy is going down, where discipline issues are going down. Test scores are going to be fine. Those are going to follow. So there are many states that are starting to embrace a much more holistic set of metrics. It is a little bit more complicated, a little more confusing, complex, but I think it's much more comprehensive and a much more honest picture of school and district and state progress. So it's a long way of saying that leadership is coming from the states. As Congress moves to fix No Child Left Behind, my desperate hope is that they take the best ideas from the best states and put that into fixing and reauthorizing No Child Left Behind, not sort of put their heads down in the sand in Washington. But I encourage, again, all of you to look at what states are doing. None of it is perfect, but the folks are working really, really hard, and there's a level of creativity and innovation that honestly I've never seen before that I think gives us a platform from which, a foundation from which hopefully we can build.
Well, really pleased to hear what you're saying, and of course many of these principals are working with what I call the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And let's just hope that with the momentum and the push that's coming from your department, and really appreciate that you're getting behind this movement for multiple measures sooner than later, because it will make a huge difference. We have wonderful principals who could be on the verge of being required to move out of their roles at a time when we need them the most.
Yeah. And so again, if you're in states that haven't applied for a waiver, I absolutely encourage you to encourage them to do that.
Good.
And just to be really clear where I stand, I'm not a fan at all of AYP. I'm not a fan of looking at just an absolute test score and a proficiency cut score.
Okay.
We know there are huge perverse incentives there just to teach that small group of kids around that bubble, not the kids that are more advanced or kids who are struggling. What I do want to know, Gail, are kids improving each year? What's growth and gain? And whether you're gifted or average or
We
special
want to know
needs,
that too.
how much are folks improving? And again, I always give the example, if a child comes to a school or to a teacher 3 grade levels behind and leaves a grade level behind, under the old system, that school or teacher or principal is labeled a failure. That's actually done amazing work. They've improved 2 or 3 years for years of instruction. And so I want to shine a much bigger spotlight on progress, on growth and gain for every kid, not a small percent around the bubble, but for 100% of our students.
Fantastic, great news. We also know, you mentioned it, the sequester, and we know far too many principals are facing even tougher cuts, IDA, impact aid. How will the department help principals as they deal with the reality of these cuts?
Yeah, so sequester, just to be really clear, it's just an unmitigated disaster. It's just, for me, the epitome of dysfunction in Washington, and I'm just so sorry about it. There's just zero upside, and it's impacting all of you, but let me be really clear. As tough as it is for all of you, if some of you are working around military bases where you don't have property tax and what's called impact aid, that cut is 30–40%. So this is, we're devastating the education for the children of families whose parents, moms and dads are risking their lives for us in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's just absolutely insane. It's absolutely devastating around Native American populations on reservations. Those are children who have had the least for far too long. So here are 2 populations, Native American and the children of military families, who we owe every child everything, but these are 2 populations we need to be, we can't do enough for them. The fact that we're doing so much less now and scaling back, it just makes no sense whatsoever. Head Start programs, many Head Start programs around the country closed this, summer a week or 2 weeks or a month early because they ran out of money. And these, again, are children who are at risk, who need longer years, not shorter. So to be really clear, I was just trying to be honest, there's very little we can do to mitigate the impact. This is just a cut that's across the board, and we don't have some magic way of making up for that. What we desperately need to do, again, and put politics and ideologies aside, what we need is all of you to speak to your members of the House and Senate and say sequester needs to be reversed as we go into the fall. That's the only way, in a real way, that we have the ability to try and restore those cuts. But short of congressional action, this pain is going to get tougher, and it's hurting the kids who least deserve it. And again, it's just absolutely unacceptable to me.
Well, I think we all heard loud and clearly, put the pressure on Congress, and that was tantamount to a call to action for this group.
They have to be in your schools, they have to hear the stories. And again, I think people in Washington lose sight of the real world. And I don't mean that personally about any of the leaders, but they lose sight of what's going on for real kids and real families. And you guys are uniquely positioned to bring those stories home.
Well, thank you for sharing your insights on that. And we have one final question, and you talked about it already, but I'm hoping you'll share a little bit more detail with the group around the efforts the department has underway related to mental health coordination of services. And we've been actively involved with 8 other organizations and the Office of the Vice President. We really applaud the administration for those efforts. Tell us a little bit more about what schools can expect going forward.
Yeah, so first I just want to publicly thank the President and the Vice President for their leadership on this issue, and it's been You know, President's job is not easy, but he will be the first to say that by far the hardest day of his tenure was going to Sandy Hook and meeting with those families. Nothing he's done compares to that experience. And he talks about it all the time to me in pride about how impactful that was. And all of us who are parents, it's unimaginable that families and communities go through that. So part of what they have challenged, the President and Vice President has challenged me and Kathleen Sebelius to do, again, who's been such a great partner at HHS, is to lead a national conversation around mental health. And there's so much we have to do. First thing we have to do is destigmatize it. And we have to sort of put these issues out there in the public. And folks who need help need to have access to help, need to know it's okay to get help. They need to know where to go to get help. And so there's many things we want to do, whether it's school-based healthcare clinics, whether, again, it's trying to get a couple $100 million from Congress for more school counselors and social workers and psychologists or whatever it might be, whether it's better connecting to community resources that are already there. We have a lot of children who are hurting. We have a lot of family members who are hurting, and we owe it to them to get them help. And tragically, if we don't get some of them help, some horrendous things happen. And so this is one where we need to, again, just have a very open and public national conversation, remove the stigma, bring more resources to the table, have more collaboration between schools and hospitals or clinics or whatever it might be, and facilitate that. We see some communities that have done a fantastic job there, others that haven't. There's not always going to be, there's never going to be enough money, so how we better coordinate that. But there are a lot of kids now who aren't getting the help they need. And as all of you guys know as principals, when budgets are tough, what often gets cut, it's social workers and counselors, and the caseloads go up to astronomical numbers, and kids fall through the cracks, and when that happens, bad things happen. Yes. So this is not an overnight thing we can turn around, but more resources, removing the stigma, better collaboration. We think there's a lot we can do to sort of make these kinds of opportunities the norm rather than exception, and an acceptable thing for children and families to seek out.
Fantastic. And keeping children safe in school is always a priority for principals, so they appreciate everything you can do, not only to keep themselves, their teachers, the children and the teachers, but also themselves. As we know, this job has become a lot more dangerous than it should be. So we appreciate everything you're doing there. Before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? And before while you're collecting your thoughts, I just want to say this Department of Education deserves tremendous accolades for reaching out and collaborating with other agencies within that beltway, because it's the first time. I've been in Washington for over 30 years. It's the first time that any administration has very deliberately sought to cross those lines and to really coordinate their support and their services on behalf of our entire K-12 community. So I know that you put forth a lot of initiative to make that happen, and the team we work with at the department and with all those other departments has been through that great leadership, and we thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, and just would challenge all of you, and Gail, you do a great job of holding us accountable for being a good partner. And as passionate as I am and my team are, and as much as we care, none of us are teaching kids to read every single day. None of us are in schools every single day. You guys are the ones doing the hard work. So if we're supporting you in doing the hard work, then we're doing a good job. If we're not supporting you, if we're part of the, if we're creating obstacles, if we're part of the problem, well, that's, we can't feel good about ourselves. So I think I'll just close where I started, just again to say simply thank you. And this is an extraordinary time to be working in public education. A time of huge challenges, not enough money, rising expectations, lots going on. But I think we're not just fighting for our kids here, we're fighting for our country. And we have a chance, I think, over the next couple years to go to an entirely different level. And the only way we get there is through great leadership. Leadership matters tremendously in education and business and government and nonprofits and anything. This is a set of pretty amazing leaders that you help to represent. And whatever we can do to be a good partner, please hold us accountable to doing that.
Well, let us thank you again, and let me say we look forward to our continued work together and have really sincerely appreciated the opportunity to work with literally dozens of folks at the Department of Education and your work with all of our states and all of our members all across the country. We know you're out there a great deal, and I know you'll have lots of invitations and hope that you will visit each and every one of the schools that you possibly can. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Thanks so much.